Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're deconstructing a seriously wild, convention-breaking marketing stunt that basically stopped the advertising world in its tracks recently. Imagine a marketing strategy so daring it literally breaks down the physical architecture of a fast food store just to prove a point. We're going to look at exactly what one global giant did to make a massive statement, and more importantly, we're going to dig deep into the hard academic science of why it actually worked so well. So buckle up, because we are completely breaking down the psychology, the underlying strategy, and the literal architecture of 24/7 retail.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. What actually happens when a restaurant decides it wants to prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Well, back in early 2025, KFC and the advertising agency TBWA over in the United Arab Emirates did the unthinkable. They physically removed the front doors from their store locations, literally took them right off the hinges. It's this incredibly disruptive move that totally redefines what it means to be open 24/7, simply by removing the very barrier that usually tells us a store is closed.
And the best part? Instead of just chucking those doors in a dumpster, they transformed them into these experiential, out-of-home billboards. They plastered them with cheeky messages like, "Who needs doors when you never close?" and embedded them with specific QR codes. If you walked by and scanned the door, boom, it immediately gave you map directions to the nearest open KFC. You could even redeem it for free late-night food. They took a physical boundary and brilliantly turned it into a wide-open invitation right in the middle of the city. It's pretty genius.
To understand why a major brand would take such a massive physical and operational risk, let's move into Section 1, Marketing Masterclass, KFC's Core Strategy. Now, looking at KFC's marketing pillars, they rely heavily on a consistent brand identity and adapting to local markets. But the one we really need to focus on today is their absolute embrace of humor and creativity. They have a well-documented history of taking highly calculated risks. Remember that massive UK chicken shortage back in 2018? They ran this full-page apology ad with their famous bucket logo completely rearranged to spell FCK. It was an absolute masterstroke because it leaned right into a really uncomfortable truth with profound humility and incredibly sharp wit. This new outdoors campaign is born from that exact same DNA, using a bold, literal, real-world action to communicate an unwavering brand promise.
But let's pivot away from the flashy advertising campaign for a second and get into the data in Section 2, Science of Satisfaction, focusing on the 24/7 consumer.
To truly understand what makes the late-night consumer tick, we're going to draw on a completely fascinating study published by the Research and Scientific Innovation Society. This academic study out of Malaysia dug into the operational challenges and the primary consumer drivers for 24-hour mamak restaurants. Now, for those who don't know, mamaks are these incredibly popular, round-the-clock casual dining spots. And what researchers uncovered about that late-night crowd in Malaysia, it actually translates perfectly to the global fast food market everywhere else.
Now look at this data breakdown. It's super revealing. Notice what actually drives people to a 24/7 restaurant at 2 in the morning. Socializing is at the very top with 21.5%. Price follows right behind at 21%, and convenience is sitting there at 18.5%. But notice what's surprisingly lower? Food quality. It's sitting at just 16%. The data clearly shows that during those late-night visits, consumers heavily prioritize the social aspect, the affordability, and the sheer convenience of the location way over the actual culinary quality. People just desperately want a reliable, open place to gather with their friends.
So how do academics measure this effectively? They use something called the SERV-QUAL model. It's a classic framework that breaks service quality down into 5 specific areas: tangibles, reliability, responsiveness, assurance, and empathy. The study found that these service quality factors explain a massive 52.1% of total customer satisfaction. And the 2 highest correlating factors out of the 5? Tangibles, meaning the physical environment, the stuff you can actually see, touch, and interact with, and reliability, meaning you can trust the lights will be on, the service will be consistent, and you aren't going to be let down.
So, if physical environment and reliability are absolutely key, let's see how this works in practice in Section 3, Visual Merchandising and Consumer Attention.
This brings us to a 2025 study from the Journal of Sustainability, Industrial Engineering, and Management System. This qualitative retail study proves that visual merchandising and environmental cues are the absolute primary drivers when it comes to capturing consumer focus. Think about it for a second. In our modern world where we are constantly bombarding with digital notifications and physical stimuli, it's the physical, environmental design of a store that successfully cuts through all that noise, grabs our attention, and ultimately shapes our entire perception of the brand.
And guys, this brilliantly illustrates the big aha moment of this entire explainer. Notice the stark comparison here. On one hand, academic theory tells us that tangibles and reliability drive late-night satisfaction and that environmental cues capture attention. On the other hand, KFC literally took this dense academic theory and applied it directly to the real world. By physically removing their doors, they provided the ultimate tangible visual cue. That missing door is undeniable physical proof of their reliability. It's the classic show, don't tell marketing strategy, executed flawlessly right there in the physical environment.
But let's look at how this plays out in the real world long term. We're moving to section 4, gimmick or genius, the campaign reality.
We have to play the impartial critic here for a minute. Using an analysis from the marketing publication Campaign Canvas, we can clearly see some severe limitations to this whole approach. First off, while the physical disruption is undeniably effective for capturing Gen Z and millennial attention, some might see it as just a performative stunt rather than something that delivers real value. But beyond that, there are legitimate, very real security and safety concerns for both the staff and the customers when a store literally has no doors late at night. Third, the highly cheeky tone might completely alienate older demographics or families. And finally, the absolute biggest hurdle, it's simply not scalable. You can pull this off in a few flagship locations in the UAE, sure, but you cannot roll this out to thousands of global franchises dealing with wildly different climates, crime rates, and local regulations. When you tally all this up in Campaign Canvas's scorecard, the crucial point really reveals itself. They gave it an incredible 9.5 out of 10 for concept and originality, because it truly is a breathtakingly brilliant idea. But then look down at scalability. It gets a mere 5.0. Because of those massive practical limitations we just talked about, the overall campaign score heavily drops to a 7.6. So it acts as a highly effective, short-term localized activation, but it struggles immensely as a viable long-term global strategy.
Which brings us right to the end of our analysis. KFC masterfully utilized the science of tangibles and visual merchandising to create a campaign that perfectly communicated their reliable 24/7 service. But I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today. As the initial shock wears off, the social media buzz inevitably fades away, and those physical doors go right back on the hinges to ensure safety. Will the message of ultimate convenience actually remain stuck in the consumer's mind? Or is this simply a brilliant but fleeting moment of viral fame? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep looking for the deeper strategy behind the stunts.